Hey guys, welcome to today's video where I'm going to give you a full walkthrough of what I consider the best fishing kayak on the market, dollar for dollar. Fish on! That's a toad, brother. Golly! All right guys, so before we jump into today's review, I got to tell you that I helped develop this boat, but you are going to get my unbiased opinion on how it came out. So let's take the boat and go bow to stern and let me walk you through the things I love, the things I don't love, the things that I change, and some of the rigging suggestions that I have for you for the RS117. So first and foremost, I am a huge fan of these fat grip handles. They brought that over from the SS series. To the fat grip handle, I actually like to connect this adjustable drag strap from the folks at Rogue. And this is really important if you ever flip your kayak. Now, for years, I used just the standard regular drag strap. I did put an extension loop in there to where it could reach the cockpit. You could also use it to stand up and sit down. But with this adjustable drag strap, you don't have to worry about that, and you can adjust it for dragging, but you can also adjust the length to the cockpit, which makes it easy to use it as a stand-up assist strap. But more than that, and I'll talk about that in the video where I show you how to flip your fishing kayak, this adjustable drag strap can actually be a lifesaver. When I get done dragging the kayak to where I want to go, I simply take this cover, stick the strap inside right there. It's ready to go when I need it, but it's out of the way when I don't. The first thing you're going to notice on the BONAFIDE RS117 is that it doesn't have a front hatch. What they chose to do instead is to put this skirt over the forward gear well. And so the only things that I like to put in this gear well is I actually like to stick my measuring board in there so it's out of the way. And I like to stick my soft plastics bag in the front because when you get a big old bag of soft plastics, the weight adds up real quick, and putting a little bit more weight forward that you can still have easy access to helps balance out the boat. Now in this forward tank well, it has a scupper hole, and I see a lot of people plug in this scupper hole. Please don't do that if you're fishing a river, because if you take your nose through a wave, or if you're fishing a lake and that nose goes through a wave, you're gonna fill this front area up and it's not gonna be able to drain. When we flip the boat over and I show you the hole, you'll understand that that scupper is there so that you can run your scupper transducer cord to your power source and mount your graph right here. Now that's not something that I like to do, and I'll talk about that when I get further back on the boat. But really the way I like to set this boat up is I put my measuring board off to the side, put my soft plastics right there in the middle, I put my cover back on, strap it down, and I am ready to go. And then my measuring board is right there using up unused space, and it's easy to grab when I need it. Now there's two different types of paddling configurations that I like to use for this boat. It actually comes with a paddle keeper that is built into that same forward hatchwell cover that I was talking about. So I like to use a YakAttack, a RotoGrip, a standard base, and a 90-degree offset if I plan on standing a lot. That way I can put the paddle off to the side, put it in the paddle keeper, click it in place. That works great when I'm sitting, but what's really awesome about it is when I'm standing up, it puts the paddle right there where I can grab it when I need it. Now, if I'm fishing a river and I don't plan on standing up a lot, I'm a big fan of the double header, so I just use the double header off to one side. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind about using the double header on these XL gear tracks is you have to remove the bottom keeper because the track does not fit, the keyway does not fit into the track. So just simply take that bottom keeper off, throw it in your little gear hatch right here, and then it'll work perfectly fine. I love this thing for being able to have my paddle right where I need it quickly. If you're fishing a river where you're going around corners and running into trees and stuff, you might want to opt to take this off. But for me, for flat water fishing or for fishing open rivers, the double header from YakAttack is a must-have, not just on the RS117, but pretty much every fishing kayak that I use these days. So coming on back, like I mentioned before, there is a scupper hole for your transducer that goes to the bottom of the boat, and that's because you have this little dry hatch right here. Now, I always like to carry an extra drag strap because a lot of people that I go fishing with don't have one, and it's also great to have if you end up needing to tow somebody or to help them portage. So I always throw an extra drag strap inside my little hatch here. Now, this hatch is designed to be waterproof, and it is promoted by BONAFIDE as waterproof. I see a lot of people talking about putting their phone and their keys and their wallet and all that kind of stuff in there. I personally wouldn't do that. I don't trust anything in the kayak fishing world that says it's dry. I don't care if it's got a seal. This hinge is kind of loose. This seal around here is not always going to be the same, depends on how the boat cools. And so if you flip the boat over and there's water present there, it's gonna make it into that hatch. So I'm not a fan of using that thing as dry storage. I just use it as storage. You can choose to do it whichever way you want. But again, I also don't mount my depth finder here. I actually mount my depth finder off to the side, but I also very rarely use a depth finder with this boat. I'll talk about that in just a second. So again, the only thing that I really add to the boat, other than whichever paddle management is, I will put a YakAttack base right here so that when I'm filming, I can put a camera arm up here that sticks back and gets you that forward camera view or that down river camera view, and that's probably not something that appeals to most people. Now, coming on back, we're gonna get into the first thing that I don't like about this boat, and it's one of the things that I've given the feedback to BONAFIDE, and I'm gonna keep giving the feedback to them, is I'm a big dude, and there's a lot of you guys out there that are big dudes. And so the first thing that I hate about this boat when it comes from the factory is they put the hardware facing in. I put it back the way it comes from the factory just to show you guys. But the first thing I do when I get one of these boats is I take the seat out and I flip this hardware around so that the head is on the inside and the nut is on the outside. That way it doesn't dig into your legs. The second thing that I don't really love about this boat is the actual seat itself, okay? There's a weird gap right here that means when you're sitting all the way back, you have your butt kind of out here a little bit and the back is the right height, but the configuration is just a little bit weird. But I will say this, I've come up with a solution, and this is another one of those things that I use it on every fishing kayak, so it's not a big deal for me. But if you buy this BONAFIDE kayak, one of the first things that I would tell you to do is to grab a Kayak Cushion. And so the way this thing works is you just throw it on the seat, you take your strap, bring it around under the frame, bring it back through this little keeper right here that keeps it from sliding back, bring it around behind the seat arm, hook up to this little cam buckle right here, put the tag in through there, and then all you have to do is cinch that down. Now, it's real simple. What that also does is it raises you up a little bit. The first thing that you're gonna wanna do when you get this boat is you're gonna wanna flip that hardware around like I said, but you're also gonna wanna tighten these straps as tight as you can get them, and you're gonna wanna retighten them as often as you can. If you're a big angler, like I am, the number one reason this seat will be uncomfortable for you, and I see a lot of smaller anglers complaining about it, is they don't get this scoop tight enough. So if you leave that loose, when you put the seat back in the boat, you're actually sitting down in a scoop and you're gonna rub on this bar on both sides. The tighter you keep that bar, the better it's gonna be. Now, the seat comes with two different positions. There's a low position and there's a high position. I'll show you what I don't like about the low position when we get this thing out on the water, but I'll try to explain it now. When you go into the low position, I think that you're only able to adequately paddle this boat if you're under 6'2". Now, here is my workaround for that. These foot braces right here slide down and they actually come off. So when I'm in the low position, if I'm fishing rough water, I actually take the pedals off, throw them in my little dry hatch right here, and I sit in the low position. I actually use the forward bulkhead for bracing, and that's where my foot goes. So if you're over 6'1", 6'2", that's a little tip. If you're in the low position, just take the foot pedals off and brace against the forward bulkhead. I'm not exactly sure how tall you can be and still get away with that. I think if you're over 6'4", this probably isn't the boat for you, and you could probably get away with it right about up to about 6'4" in the low position, but I'm gonna talk about that in just a second. So let me throw my little foot brace back on here. Whoops. And then we'll get to the rest of the boat. Okay, so it's obvious those things are really easy to adjust. Now, I've been in the low position a grand total of about 2 times in this boat because I am a big fan of the high position for a couple of reasons. One, it's gonna bring me up and back. 2, I can lock this little hook Omni clip on the back of the seat frame, and so when I stand up, my seat back doesn't fall forward. When you move the boat to the low position, that bungee is really hard to reach. So you've got the compounded effect of you're too far forward and you've got less room to stand, and the seat back wants to fall down on you. So for me, I love the high position because I can put my heels all the way back here and I can stand over the top of these scuppers. And for a bigger angler, having that extra support keeps the deck from flexing. Now, one cool thing that BONAFIDE came up with is this little ridge was put here for a couple of reasons. One, it was put here for stability and to add a cross brace, so when you sit in this seat, it doesn't make the boat flex. The happy benefit from that, and the additional benefit, is that when you put a tackle box in here, it doesn't slide forward. One of the number one reasons you see anglers fall out of fishing kayaks is they stand up, something slides forward, they move their foot, they step on it, and out of the boat they go. So this little bulkhead right here is really good for that. I love the fact that it's got traction pads in it, but it's not overdone. And meaning you don't have it up in the forward footwell so that when your feet slide back and forth, one, it wears the traction pad out, and two, you don't really use it up there. It's mostly just for aesthetics. So I like the fact that BONAFIDE went simple with just the 2 traction pads right where you need them. Now, one thing that's not mounted on this boat that I say is a must-have if you're gonna fish open water, but I really wouldn't recommend it on this boat in the river, is to add an anchor wizard. The anchor wizard just slides right into the track, and so depending on which paddle configuration I'm using, I'm gonna use the anchor wizard on the other side. But again, that's just a nice to have, it's not a have to have, but a little window weight or the new 4 or 6 pound anchor that the folks from Anchor Wizard just came up with is a perfect complement to this boat. Again, a nice to have, not a have to have. The cool thing about this fishing kayak is you really could go fishing with it right off of the showroom floor. It's got 2 built-in flush mount rod holders. As you can see here, I'm using one of them for my YakAttack leverage landing net, but you could also just take your rods, drop them right into those flush mount rod holders, or you could do like I'm doing over here, which I took a YakAttack camera pole, cut the mount off of the back, and I can just stick it right into that flush mount rod holder. It allows me to get a really cool over-the-shoulder shot, but it also allows me to grab that camera, use it as an underwater release camera, and hold it out to use for that selfie shot. But as I was saying, it's also a great way to just drop a rod holder in there. Speaking of rod holders, these dudes right here are actually designed to hold your paddle, but since I use a paddle holder, and I don't necessarily use this for a paddle keeper like it was designed, but again, if you buy this thing right off the shelf, it's got everything you need, maybe not everything you want, you do have a built-in paddle keeper. But when I'm fishing the rivers and I'm going through overhanging brush and things like that, I actually turn these things into rod keepers and just strap my rods down horizontal just like that. They're out of the way, they're not in my paddle stroke, they're right there when I need them, but I'm not having to worry about putting extra rod holders on the kayak, and I'm not having to worry about my rods getting tangled up in bridges and overhanging trees and things along those lines. Now, one thing that you wouldn't expect to get out of a boat at this price point is the ability to put any of the BlackPaks in there. You can use the 13x16, which I have in here. You can use the 16x16 sideways. You could use the 13x13 if you want to, but this is the configuration for the BlackPak that I set up specifically for my RS117. So I basically set it up fore and aft. I got my 2 hinges on the back, and I went with only 1 latch in the front, so when I'm turning around, I don't have to fight with the seat to try to get both of them off of there. I can keep a ton of gear in here, but I am able to use longer handle rods back here in the back like this. By raising that rod holder up, it's in the high and dry position, and that handle doesn't hit on the bottom. And if I want to secure it for going around trees, I can actually use that tethered hook, and it holds everything in place. This video is not a BlackPak video. It's just to show you that the BlackPak works really well in the RS117. It also comes with a really cool tackle box holder right there. So if you didn't have your tackle box under your seat, you can stick it right there. One of the things that I'm a big fan of is sticking it behind the bungee and against the BlackPak. So when I stand up, when the boat wobbles, this tackle box doesn't slosh back and forth and make a bunch of noise. But they thought about a lot of tackle storage. You got the little side pocket right here with tackle storage. You've got one on this side. On this side of the boat, you actually have a built-in Nalgene bottle or Yeti bottle holder right there. That thing also works great for throwing expired plastics in, torn up plastics in. You could stick some foam in there like the traction pads and hook some spare hooks and things like that. It's just a really good, well laid out cockpit to where you can have everything where you need it and not a lot of crap that you don't. So this boat could be as simple or as complicated as you want. So come on back to the back. The last thing that I really love about this boat is it has a removable hatch in the back, so that if you wanted to take this off, put your power pole on here, mount a torpedo mount, anything like that, you have access to do that. Now, to keep the price point low, they got rid of the high fancy seat from the SS127. They got rid of the removable console, but they kept this hatch, and they kept the oversized fat grip handles in the back, and they didn't put the inserts into the boat like they would with an SS127 or 107, because you can simply take this off, mount your power pole, mount your torpedo right there. I've chosen to keep this boat really simple, really clean, really easy. In a lot of cases, I don't even take the BlackPak on the river. I'll take 2 rod holders horizontal, 1 I'll stick in a flush mount, and if I happen to be going under an overhanging bridge or tree limb or something like that, I'll just put the rods right between my legs. Bring you back up front real quick. I actually love this little groove right here, because if I'm going under a bridge or through some trees, I can stick my rod handles underneath here, and this little groove just keeps my rods right in the middle, keeps them from sliding out. They don't extend past the end of the boat, and it makes it easy for me to go down the river and navigate through trees and things like that without having to worry about my rod tip getting caught on it and dragging it out of the boat or flipping me in a worst case scenario. So guys, that's pretty much the layout of my BONAFIDE RS117. Again, I'm a little bit biased because I helped design this boat, but at the same time, I think this fishing kayak is the best fishing kayak on the market, dollar for dollar. Now, we're gonna pull the gear off this thing, flip it upside down, and I'm gonna show you some of the magic that you can't see, which is the hull design that also makes this thing perform really well. All right, guys, so one of the most important things about a fishing kayak design is the design of the hull, and it's not something we've always talked about in the video, so I'm gonna make a point to do that moving forward. So if you look at the hull of this boat, there's a really nice pronounced keel, which is gonna allow this boat to track really well for a short boat. Anything under 12 foot, in my opinion, is starting to get short. At 117 means this boat is 11 foot 7 inches. So like I said, coming on back, you're gonna see underneath here, this is the back of that scarper that I was talking about. You got your 2 screws there to mount your depth finder mount, and you can put your transducer right there. It'll fit anything up to about a 9-inch transducer. So again, you're probably not gonna be putting structure scan or live target or anything on a boat like this, so it's gonna accommodate most of your, you know, your value, price point, depth finder mounts, which is what this boat was designed for. But as you notice coming on back that you've got these 2 pronounced pontoons that go all the way back the length of the boat. Those 2 pontoons are gonna give you a ton of stability. When I get on the water and I start talking about secondary stability versus initial stability, when you're in the water is going to be hitting about right here, which is going to give you a little bit less initial stability. So the boat will feel a little tippy to most people, but once you realize that the more you lean, the more boat goes in the water, and when you hit that chine, it tends to stick. That's where the secondary stability comes in. The balance that you have to find in a design is that the lower the initial stability, and the better the secondary stability, the better balance you can have between speed, performance, and stability. And you accomplish that by doing these chines on the boat design, but you still have really good initial stability by the fact that you've got this catamaran style pontoon hull, which is also complemented by the fact that there's enough scuppers to really stiffen this boat up, but they designed it as such that when that tapers, as you're moving through the water, if you bring a wave over the bow, that tapered scupper is going to help evacuate that water much quicker, so you're not going to end up in an unsafe situation if you're running a river or if you're fishing in open water and things tend to get rough. Come on back to the back, and I'll really show you the cool part about this boat. As these pontoon hulls start to come back together, what you end up with is 2 really pronounced keels in the rear. Those 2 keels are going to allow you to have a boat that at slow speed is going to maneuver really well, but the faster you paddle it, or if you motorize it, those 2 keels are really gonna lock that boat down, kind of like 2 fins on the back of an airplane. The airplanes that have 2 fins on the back got a lot more stability. This does the exact same thing. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, because I was, you know, the driving force behind getting companies to do this in the beginning, is these sacrificial skid plates in the back. Initially, fishing kayaks didn't have that. Anglers grabbed the front handle, they picked the boat up. Only the back is dragging along the surface, and you end up with these holes. So first of all, you got 2 keels, but you got 2 sacrificial keel replacement pads right there. That's pretty much a walkthrough of the hull. This boat, like I said, is 11 foot 7 inches. It's 33.5 inches wide. It comes in at 77 pounds, which sounds like a lot, but it's a full 30 pounds lighter than the SS127. So when I fish out of this boat, it feels like I've been running with ankle weights and I took them off. But this boat also comes in at $1,149, which makes it what I consider the best bang for the buck, dollar for dollar, for a fishing kayak on the market today. But where the rubber meets the road is getting this thing on the water and seeing how it performs. So I'm gonna flip it over, throw the gear back on it, get it on the water, and give you my real opinion on performance but out there on the water. All right, guys, so let's jump into the on the water portion of this RS117, review overview. Like I said before, I'm a big dude and this seat is plenty comfortable, but I highly recommend adding the kayak cushion. I also highly recommend flipping those screws the opposite way of the way that they come from the factory. And if you end up getting your boat and it's not that way, it's because I convinced BONAFIDE to do it that way, to do it right the first time. All right, so again, one of the things about this boat is if you sit there and rock it, it feels like it's initially unstable. But the reason for that is that when you're paddling, you have more boat up out of the water. That's a lower coefficient of friction, which is a fancy term for drag, which allows the boat to be relatively fast for a short boat. Now, this boat is not a fast boat. It's not gonna win any speed races, and it's not designed for that. But the cool thing about it is it has really good secondary stability. So when you lean, you hit that edge really hard, okay? So if you notice here, I've got all my weight out over the side of the boat, and the boat is just stuck. Now, that's important when you're sitting in the boat and you want to do things like, sweep strokes or edge or do things like that for turning, especially when it comes to fishing in a river and you want to hit an eddy, you want to lean in and edge and turn and pull into that eddy so you can make a presentation. So again, like I talked about when we were doing the hull review, the boat's got a nice keel on the front. It's got a pontoon style hull. It's a relatively short boat, which allows it to be really maneuverable, but the faster you go, the more the boat digs in. What's also cool about the fact that you have those two keels in the back is that when I lean, I get a lot of support on that back quarter so I can reach further back and make that long stroke and then really maneuver the boat, okay? So the boat is very responsive and really sporty when you need it to be, but when you get going forward, because of that double keel, it tends to track better than most boats in its class. So the other thing that comes into play, and I'll turn sideways so you can see it, is a lot of your modern fishing kayaks have really high back seats, and most manufacturers have gone to this thicker foam up on the back. So when you're not using the kayak cushion, I feel like the seat back is a little too high, so it's pushing the PFD up on the top. But when I get the kayak cushion and I tighten that seat frame up, it actually hits me just perfect. And when you push off the foot braces and get your butt back, the seat is actually really comfortable. Now, this seat is not designed to be a performance seat. It's designed to be a fishing seat. So if it was a performance seat, it would be a little bit lower back, and that way when you're sitting up and you're paddling, it's not anywhere in your way. But this boat is designed specifically for fishing. So you're not going to be rotating your torso when you paddle. You're more gonna be pulling with your bottom arm and pushing with your top arm, so the seat isn't a factor. A lot of wreck people think that the seat back is too high, and honestly, it really is. But when you're out there all day fishing and you want that extra support, you're really gonna appreciate that higher, wider seat back and that wider seat frame. Again, all you have to do is add a kayak cushion, and this thing is as comfortable as any fishing kayak seat on the market. Now, when it comes to reviewing fishing kayaks, and one of the reasons that I don't really jump into the really inexpensive boats, the $300–400 boats, the sometimes even $500 boats, is I firmly believe that if you're gonna fish out of a kayak, you need to be able to stand up. And to be able to stand up in a fishing kayak, to me, is the only way I truly classify it as a fishing kayak. So if you can't stand up in it, and you can't stand up in it relatively easily, like so, and just pop right up, then to me, it's not a good fishing kayak. So that's why I say that this boat is the best fishing kayak dollar for dollar on the market, because you get really good features, you get really good stability, you've got the ability to put a depth finder on there, you've got a scupper that's designed for it, the boat's gonna paddle really well in the sitting position, but it also maneuvers really well when you're in the standing position for keeping that nose pointed where you need to cast, and it also responds really well. But I'm gonna go back to what I talked about with stability before. Let me spin the boat back around so I can show you guys what I'm saying. Now, with that really high secondary stability and a little bit lower initial stability, when you first stand up, if you do this, it's gonna feel a little tippy, but what you wanna do is put the weight on one foot and go kind of light on the other foot. So I highly recommend going heavy on the foot that's opposite where you're casting. That way, if I cast over to that shoreline and I set the hook, but the lure breaks, I've already got that leg solid. Now, if I go to the opposite side and I'm wrecking a presentation, and I set the hook and I miss the fish or the line breaks, I've got to go all the way through the arc of stability to this side, and most likely I'm going swimming out the other side. So from a stability standpoint, when it comes to standing up, if you put the weight on one foot, generally opposite the direction you're casting, you're really gonna lock that boat in. It's gonna wanna push back and it's gonna support your weight. And what's cool about that is you can change the foot that you've got weight on throughout the course of the day. Now, The other reason that that's really cool is when I start paddling, whichever way I make the paddle stroke, I can put weight on the opposite foot and get the boat to turn that direction, because when I take those two keels, if I push this keel in the water, it's gonna make the boat turn the opposite direction. So you can pretty much steer the boat with your feet, and that really comes into play if I'm throwing like a buzz bait, a crankbait, a spinnerbait, or anything that's got some drag to it. I can actually throw that thing, put my rod tip out there, and I can steer the boat with my feet and let the lure pull me along, and I almost never even need to pick up the paddle. So overall, I think the RS117 is a great boat. I personally think it's the best value on the market, dollar for dollar, when it comes to what you get is what you pay for. So let's run back through the cons one more time. If you're a tall angler and you're in the high position seat, your knees might be a little bit too high. Okay, for me, I can push those foot pedals all the way forward and I'm good to go in the high position. In the low position, I pretty much have to take the foot pedals off and put my feet right against the forward part of the cockpit, and it's still okay for me and I can get away with it. Again, I very rarely, if ever, fish in the low position, even when I'm river fishing. The one thing that I really love about this boat is it's, again, one of those things that you could take it off of the showroom floor straight to the water. You need a rod, you need a PFD, and you need lures, and you're ready, and a paddle, and you're ready to fish. But you can also uprig it to depth finders and motors and power poles and all of those other things that really make this boat, again, in my opinion, the best boat on the market, dollar for dollar. All right, guys, so there's my overview of the RS117 fishing kayak from the folks at BONAFIDE. This boat finds a place in my arsenal for quick trips, for grab and go, and for river trips. Now, they do have a river boat that's coming down the road, and it's gonna be interesting to see if that river boat replaces this as my primary river boat, because to be honest with you, I love this boat. I love how light it is. I love how easy it is to get in and out of the water, and I love how responsive it is when it comes to getting out there. So you got the paddle park. If you don't want to add a YakAttack accessory, you can put your paddle right on the side and strap it down. You can use the double header. You can use the RotoGrip like I talked about before, but pretty much this boat comes with everything you need to get out there and enjoy the water. Guys, I hope you enjoy this overview of the RS117. Y'all do me a favor, leave a comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this review, and tell me what other fishing kayaks in this price range that you'd like to see me review in the next video.